In this video, we're going to be going through a 5-step evidence-based plan on the best way to ask for a raise and how to maximise your chances of getting the pay rise that you deserve. This is our second video in the series about how to manage your career. Last week, we went through the 6 things that got me to a 6-figure salary by the time I was 30. Link to that video is in the description below. Total Jobs found that 67% of employees don't feel comfortable requesting a pay increase, and 31% admitted that they lack the confidence to even raise the subject. It makes it much easier to justify a salary increase. The first step is to do your research. In the book I Will Teach You to Be Rich by Remit Sethi, he talks about how in a salary negotiation, if you don't have a number in mind and you haven't done the requisite research, then you're basically going to be at the mercy of a more experienced hiring manager who can simply control the conversation. So the first thing you need to research is the process. Now, larger companies will have probably a well-established process that you're going to have to go through in order to follow, but it's worth finding out what that process is. It basically avoids you getting fobbed off by your manager saying, oh, I have to check with this person, I have to check with that person. If you know what the process is, then again, it's another thing that you can be prepared for. And I think researching the process, speaking to your HR team about what the process involves will really kind of empower you to know what your goals are and what your next steps are going to be. So the next thing is market research. Now, this will make sure that you're equipped with the necessary data points in order for you to accurately map out where you think your salary should be based on some external research that you've done. This can be through talking to recruiters, this can be looking at Glassdoor, and it basically is supposed to give you a feel for what you would basically earn if you were to take your skills elsewhere. But I think we should be really clear at this point. The numbers and the salary ranges that you find on Glassdoor or from having spoken to recruiters, you shouldn't be including those in your discussion. What you really want to do is use those as the basis, as the foundation, and then build a business case from there. Just sort of pointing to, oh, I saw this on Glassdoor, therefore you should pay me that, just doesn't hold much water as far as I'm concerned. The next thing to research is the number that you want. Now you've got the number, we're going to call this the golden number. This is not the bare minimum that you'd be prepared to accept, but it's also not your football player's money. Jack Chapman emphasises the importance of doing research and having a specific salary figure in mind when asking for a raise. And he also recommends framing the conversation around the value you bring to the company and being prepared to negotiate on benefits as well as a raise. And I always use a take-home pay calculator. There's obviously the gross increase that you'll be able to get from your employer, but really understanding what you'll actually get and what will hit your bank account every month, I think is really important, and it really sort of helps me to frame the conversation. The next step is setting up the meeting.
As scheduled.
Schedule a decent length time slot with your manager and say, I really want to discuss my performance, and then also say, and I also want to discuss my salary. And this is basically because some managers might shy away from having those financial discussions up front. I would generally say this isn't a water cooler discussion. If you want a particular pay increase, then you should be making sure that there's sufficient time. You don't want to basically not be able to come to a conclusion because you didn't allocate enough time for the discussion. Now, timing is really important.
Timing.
When it comes to asking for a salary raise, there was a study conducted by the Harvard Business School, and they basically found that employees who ask for a salary increase after having completed a successful project were more likely to receive one than those who didn't.
Mission accomplished!
And that's basically because it makes it much easier to demonstrate your value to the company and justify a salary increase because you've got recent evidence that you can point to.
Winning's winning.
The clock is ticking, so now you need to rehearse your pitch. So for your pitch, you need a brag sheet or your elevator pitch. This is something that kind of really clearly and briefly articulates what you've done since your last pay review. Now, we should be totally clear, this is not an abridged version of your CV. It has to be very specific to the day-to-day tasks that you do and how that has changed since you last had a pay review. In Michael Porter's book, Competitive Strategy, you need to outline your case with clear and concise arguments backed by supporting evidence. I think one of the things that you really need to have in your brag sheet is also going to be, quick answers to why you didn't do something, so that you can lay out, these are the things I've done, and then if your manager comes back and says, but you didn't do this, you can say, well, because of this, taken care of.
Boom! Home run!
And by having that, it means that you don't get bogged down in the why you shouldn't get a raise. Instead, you spend much more of the conversation talking about why you should be getting a raise, all the things that you have brought rather than all the things that you didn't bring. And I think, remember that negotiation in this instance revolves around 2 factors, what you're worth and what they're willing to pay for you. So you really need to have kind of quite quick answers to questions like, what is the market rate for your job? What can you offer that others can't, and how much would it affect your employer if you left? In Daniel Pink's book Drive, he says to emphasize new skills and certifications or training that you've acquired and that contribute to your professional development and the benefit to your employer. And I think your brag sheet should also kind of demonstrate how what you're doing aligns with organizational goals. Demonstrating how your work aligns with the organization is kind of crucial. You know, in Jim Collins' book, Good to Great, he says, emphasize how your contributions have positively impacted the company's bottom line, efficiency, customer satisfaction. Not everyone works in a sales role. And actually, if you're in a customer services function, being able to point to those instances, you know, is going to be just as beneficial to you. So you've set the meeting up, you've done your research, the time has come. Now, this is kind of the make or break moment, but you can do yourself a lot of favors by being really prepared for this meeting.
Prepare yourselves.
Now, there are a whole load of really good free resources about how to, you know, manage the tone of your voice, how to, you know, have confident body language. I'd also recommend Joe Navarro's book. He kind of provides insights into non-verbal communication in professional settings. And it also talks about things like non-verbal cues and how to convey confidence.
Confidence.
Now, you want to move through your brag sheet at a pretty consistent pace. Don't rush it and make sure that it's pretty high level. If you start rushing, you start clamoring around, and then it kind of puts you on the back foot. And you should be focusing on your accomplishments rather than simply asking for a raise. Build that business case that we keep talking about. Highlight specific accomplishments and projects you've completed to demonstrate your value to the company. This approach can be just way more persuasive than simply making a general request. Simon Sinek writes in his book, Start With Why, make sure you can point to specific examples where you've exceeded expectations, delivered excellent results, or saved the company time or money. And I think also look at it from your boss's point of view. Why should they invest in you rather than, say, buying new equipment or investing in someone else? And a key thing is going to be to stay positive, not pushy. You know, negotiation might be scary, but you should always be considerate and keep things on a positive note.
Think positive, think positive.
In the book How to Talk to Anyone, they talk about using phrases such as, I would like to discuss my salary, or I believe my contributions warrant a higher salary. You know, this is kind of a bit more confident and a bit more assertive without being pushy. So you've done it. You've done your research, you've booked the meeting, you've gone through your brag sheet, and now it comes to actually putting the number on the table. Now, in my view, and I think there's plenty of evidence to support this, the best thing you can do is make sure that you're the one to put the number out there. The anchor is the first number that gets put on the table, and it's the most important number in the negotiation because it's what the rest of the conversation is based around. By being the person who's actually put the number on the table, you know, you've drawn the line in the sand, you've made the anchor, and then that controls the rest of the conversation. So by you having put that out there, it means that you're in much more control than if you were to let your boss put that number out there. You know, I think there's plenty of evidence in psychology that shows that your bargaining partner will feel as though they've got a better deal if they've sort of been able to chip you down a little bit from what your original ask was. So I think, you know, you may have your golden number, but adding a small buffer on top of that is always going to be beneficial to you. Worst case scenario is that you get to the golden number anyway. Best case scenario is that your golden number plus a bit, you get that extra bit. Right, so you've gone through the meeting and you've got the number that you want. Ideal, absolutely congrats. But one thing that you have to do afterwards is put it all in writing and make sure everything gets confirmed and signed off. You know, you don't want your boss, and, you know, God forbid, you don't want your boss to come down in a week's time and say, oh, you know, we agreed this number, not that number. But if you can't agree, be prepared to negotiate. And kind of negotiation is a normal part of the salary increase process. But, you know, kind of money isn't everything. If your company can't offer you the salary you want, then maybe see if there are alternative perks that you can be willing to work with them on. You know, can you work remotely more often? What about working flexible hours? Maybe some extra vacation time. In the book Getting to Yes, you know, they talk about kind of the necessity for being collaborative when it comes to negotiation, and that can come in all sorts of different forms. Now, things you shouldn't do. Don't make threats. So it's important that you keep the conversation positive. You know, whatever you do, don't threaten to leave if you don't get the raise. Tend to not focus on personal needs, because if your childcare expenses have gone up, then chances are your co-workers are dealing with similar situations as well. You know, as I keep saying, you really want to be building a business case as to why you deserve this raise. One of the things Barbara Cochran talks about is if you're not able to get the salary increase that you're looking for, you know, really sort of get into the detail with your line manager about what you have to do in order to get that increase. Be very specific, write it all down on a list, itemize it all, so that if you're able to achieve all those goals, then you can go back to your line manager and say, hey, you told me to do all these things, I've done all these things, now I want that raise that we discussed.
We need more money, bye!
And I think another really helpful tip from Barbara Cochran is if you're not able to get the salary increase that you want, then say to them, all right, we'll talk again in a month's time, 3 months' time, whatever, but make sure that they know this isn't the end of this conversation, that it's something that you're going to want to carry on revisiting. And that way, you know, you've sort of set the rules of engagement so that the next time you're sitting down with them, they know that you're going to be persistent with this.
One word: persistence.
In last week's video, we discussed the 6 things that got me to a 6-figure salary by the time I was 30. And included in that, we had your personal development plan. And so I think linking back to what Barbara Cochran was saying, You know, having a personal development plan that will hit the targets that your line manager has set, I think is going to be really important. In next week's video, we're going to be going through how to write the perfect CV, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out. We've got videos coming out on improving financial literacy, setting effective goals, and time management.